Welcome to the final football edition of Inside the Zone for the 2013 season. And unfortunately, we didn't get to crown a champion, but what a game it was down to the final minute in Lucas Oil Stadium this past week in a real heartbreaker, but also people tend to focus on how things didn't go right. There were a lot of things that went right when you're down 21-0 to even have a lead in the fourth quarter, as Bishop Dwenger did 27-21. A lot of things went well. You were down there. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. I watched the whole game on TV, though. What was the feeling after the game was over? Was it deflation? Was it happiness to be back in the game? Like, what was the vibe, I guess I should say?
Oh, I mean, they were crushed because they had made such a tremendous comeback, and one of the greatest comebacks, I would say, in high school state finals history. I mean, it was just an incredible 21-0 deficit. Mike Fiacable, you know, they talk about those quarterbacks who live in the moment, live for the moment. I mean, he took over that offense and did just everything he could. Everything that Dwenger needed to do, they were doing. They really showed that they could play even, it was an even match with Columbus East. And once they got back in the game, they got momentum, they got the lead. And, of course, Columbus East had one last answer for them.
And we'll talk about that two-point conversion attempt, which is what a lot of people are talking about in a little bit. But I want to take some of the focus on the way they were able to come back, because Dwenger did something that they don't do, and that's shoot themselves in the foot early. When it's down 14-0 to an explosive offense like Columbus East, was there any feeling that, oh my gosh, this is over? Because what they did was amazing.
Well, I don't know what the feeling was in the huddle from the sidelines, and as reporters were thinking, yeah, this game is probably over because of the power of Columbus East. You figure you give them a couple of chances to get up 3 scores on you, chances are, you've put yourself in too large of a hole to come out of against a quality opponent because they're a very, very good team. But to Dwenger's credit, they didn't see it that way. They got an opening. They clawed back, and they got back to where they were making a game of it.
I think one of the things that, as a fan, I love to see in the state championship game is that sometimes you hear from guys that you haven't heard from all season. Gus Schrader, 7 catches, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 big touchdowns. I mean, you're talking about with Watercutter, Centliver, who was injured early in the season with a broken collarbone. This is like your third-string tight end making the biggest catches of his career in a state championship game to get him back in it.
Well, and really earlier in the year hadn't even been playing offense. I mean,
yeah.
Chris Schwarzkopf changed his team around a little bit after they went in that losing streak. Kind of said, here's some new combinations, and Gus Schrader stepped up. I mean, it was a big-time performance. He had a great 55-yard, I think it was, catch that set up that go-ahead score, and Columbus East was keying in on Ryan Watercutter, as you would. I mean, he's such a potent weapon, and so I think that opened things up for him, and Schrader took advantage.
And collectively, we mentioned the errors early. There was a fumble by Ryan Snotter. He came up big later. A fumble by Tyler Tippmann. He came up with a touchdown in the fourth quarter. And Gabriel Espinoza, I know there's some balls that he normally would catch, you'd think, in the first half. He came up with a big touchdown reception himself. So not only did the team redeem itself, but the individual players, they didn't put their heads down. They showed a lot of intestinal fortitude, and those guys made big plays down the stretch.
Well, I think you rattled off several names. I think you could put the whole Dwenger team in there. I mean, you look at a team that really, really had a chance to say, okay, we're overmatched. And they didn't. To a man, they said, we're going to come back in this thing. We're going to play at our finest. You want to play your best in the state championship game. I think they accomplished that.
All right. Now, one of the lasting images to me is in Dwenger's final drive offensively, they needed to score. It could have been a field goal, whatever. They're down 1 point in the fourth quarter. Fiacable fumbles. And Nathan Neese, the senior, the captain, picks up the football. And Chris Schwarzkopf said, just like the rugby player that he is, picks it up. He took the ball like 13 yards. He knows what had to happen. He knows they needed that first down. And unfortunately gets stripped. I mean, you're talking about a roller coaster of emotions for a kid. In 5 seconds, he goes from hero to putting the head in the hands. I think to me that had to be the most heartbreaking play of the entire game.
Oh, I think so. I mean, when you look at a kid who put every ounce of effort into it, and you can't really blame him. That they were in kind of a desperate mode at that point. The clock's running down, the ball's loose. Your instinct is to grab it. His instinct is to run with it. And he was doing a good job running with it. If he went down, they still had, I think, another down that they could have ran another play after that as far as trying to get a first down in that situation. You can't fault a kid for effort. I mean, he gave everything he could to it.
Yeah, and I think most 16 to 18-year-olds, a lineman, when they first see the ball out there, the thing is jump on it, secure it. He does that, the game's over. Here's a guy with things going on in the head, decides to take off. It was a great move. It just did not happen and finish the way it was. People look at that play. I actually think it was great effort on Nathan Neese's part, and I hope he doesn't sit there and think about that play too much, because he gave everything he had.
As high school athletes, they have to embrace the moment, do what they can. There are so many plays in the course of a football game that you can't say, oh, this play did it or that play did it. And he had plays during the game where he made big plays for them. So there's no way that you can say, oh, this is what you ride your whole game on. Certainly not.
And Dwenger defensively had difficulty stopping the run. We knew Markel Jones. He's one of the premier juniors in the entire state. He was pretty good. Cowan, the quarterback, also went over 100 yards, 142 yards, I think. So
yeah, they were 330 or 339. Yeah.
What was the key there? Because it just, size-wise, Columbus East looked really big up front on the offensive line.
They were big, and they were very well trained. I talked with one of the Dwenger coaches afterwards about what they did, and they performed as an offensive line the way you would expect college teams to. I mean, they were that precise in what they did, and very impressive effort. That's why they were undefeated coming in. I think much of it was that line, and Dwenger, to their credit, was able to contain them at times in the second half when they were crawling back in the game.
Most people that watch the game or at the game that are talking about the game want to talk about the two-point conversion, because Dwenger scores with about 9 minutes and change left in the fourth quarter to take a 27-21 lead. Conventional wisdom, most people would kick the extra point. They decided to go for it. Espinoza pitches it out to Trey Casaburo. They don't get it in the end zone. So at the time you're thinking, okay, that's kind of a dicey play. But you think that kind of went along with the philosophy that they had the entire second half? Well,
as I look back on it now, I think Dwenger was doing so many things that were kind of against the grain or against the conventional wisdom, fake punts, going for it on fourth down, running flea flickers. They were kind of rolling things. They were rolling the playbook out there, and I think maybe at that point they're thinking, all of these things are working. They've got Columbus East on their heels. Here's a chance to throw another wrinkle in that they're not expecting. In retrospect, obviously, everybody looks at that and you kick the extra point, and I think at the time, that's what most of us are thinking. Well, why don't they just kick it there? I've never been wrong second-guessing. I don't know about you. Have you ever been wrong second-guessing?
My hindsight is always 20/20.
It's always right. So you look back on it, you say, yeah, you should have kicked it, but, in the heat of the moment when you're doing things, decisions have to be made. Chris Schwarzkopf said you got about 20 seconds there to decide what you want to do, go with your gut, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and I want to read you the quote that I heard from Chris Schwarzkopf. We came to win. We took a lot of chances in the second half to put us back into the game. Everything we did in the second half was to get us a chance to win. And really, had they gotten that two-point conversion, the pressure would have been on Columbus East even more to not only get a score, but have to get a two-point conversion. You don't know how that would have affected their offense. Would their quarterback get a little tight? Would they be a little tighter, knowing there was no margin of error? It was you had to get a touchdown, you had to get a two-point conversion.
Yeah, well, you have to. I think you look at it two ways. Is the reward so big that it's worth that, or is the downside of not getting it outweigh the reward of getting it? And in retrospect, we can always sit here and discuss it. There was 9 minutes left in the game, so there was time for another score. Dwenger got the ball back and had a chance. And as we said, they were past midfield. They were looking at trying to get another score. So.
Do you think that there's ever any point where maybe Chris Schwarzkopf would second guess himself? Because I know, like he said, he's going for the win. I don't know that there. I think naturally you would second guess yourself, but I think he was pretty confident in saying that was the right move.
Well, you look, and I talked to him directly after the game, and then the last few minutes after the game. I haven't talked to him in ensuing days here to see if he looks back at it differently. But as coaches, you make so many decisions over the course of the game. Right. You could look at every single play and say, oh, what if you'd done this differently? What if you'd done that differently? So I don't think coaches can spend a lot of time second-guessing themselves. I know he felt so bad for his team to lose the game like they did. Heartbreaking loss. Sometimes it's better to get beat by 20 points than to lose by 1. But, you were in a state championship game. I think Dwenger played as well as they could possibly play, came up 1 point short.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, from a if you throw out all your allegiances or knowing all the kids and the coaches that we've covered for such a long time, it was a really, really interesting game and a well-played game of football to watch, to see Bishop Dwenger come back and get to the point where they could lead a game like that in the fourth quarter. I think that gets lost in what happened at the end, but congratulations to Dwenger on really putting up a fight and representing the city of Fort Wayne very well.
Oh, no question about it. I think you had a championship game. I mean, you had two teams that were both worthy of being champions. So.